Cool. Yeah. Hey, everyone. This is a kickoff for work items working group. Yeah. Let's just start maybe by discussing why we need this, or do we need this actually, and how to best kind of organize the work. Yeah. So yeah, let's start with like maybe motivations for every group and plan and kind of what we want to achieve. And I see, Nicholas, you have the very first item.
Oh yeah, for you mean the motivation part? I mean, for us, it's very clear we want client-side rendered planning views, and the faster these work items can get, the more larger, higher the limit will be. So this is crucial. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have like any specific like API endpoint or query that's you want to optimize?
The work items listing query is the one that I would like to optimize for because it's the one that we need the most.
Yeah. Is it like specific filters there or kind of what
No,
part of it?
could be any. Like could be a product, group, or project one, and any filters you can imagine. So nothing specific.
Okay. Genia, you have the next one.
Yes, I wanted to mention, I didn't say it here, but especially for some of the features of product planning, since migrating from APX to work items, we have found degradation. We used to use REST, and clearly now is when we're putting in use loading widgets that can be quite slow, or things like hierarchy that's quite complex, especially authorization. So we have a lot of problems there. So anything that we can improve, it would be a benefit. This doesn't impact so much the listing, but it would come into play more when we have boards, roadmap, definitely. So yeah, the more we can improve a single work item as well would help.
And did you voice the next point as well? Perfect heart. Linked items, etc.
Yes, this is, I was saying that specifically we have a few widgets that are slower than others that have more impact. One of them is participants. I mentioned that later. We also have the roll-up problems that Henrik mentioned as well. Those are the slowest queries when it comes to hierarchy. Also, we have problems with linked items. This is also being loaded for listing, so that's slowing listing as well. So these are like the highlights of the widgets that need attention.
Okay. So it's mostly about the like widgets on the single work item.
Yes, yes, that would be. And the way the architecture, given that we return so much data when we load the widgets and the authorization, all of that has an impact as well. So we have discussed, also we have front-end problems of how we load the widgets, but I think here we're going to focus on what we can do from the back end. So any improvement would help really.
Okay, cool. Heinrich, you have a next one for the project management.
Yeah, for the project management, so we've previously owned like the everything issues, right? And we've dealt with this issue list problem for a while now. And it's kind of a known problem where like specifically group level lists are slow because of how Postgres needs to fetch all the data in memory and sorts them before we can get the first 10 or first 100 or first, however. And so yeah, and I think this is really important to fix because this is a basis for everything we're working on, like on the save views and everything. If the query times out, all the N+1 improvements don't matter. And yeah, Alexandra also mentioned there about the group level work items. So it's also a Q2 or was it a Q3 tier 2 item, which is the group level issues and project level epic. So it's like kind of like, you could create work items at any level at any type for any type. And so we need a unified list of work items, group level or project level. So it makes this query worse with the feature checks, authorization checks. There's lots of things going on in that query that just we need to figure out.
Yeah, and that's actually a big point on the knowledge side as well, for GLQL, because like we have those queries that time out for 15 seconds, and just being slow in general. I was wondering, did you have any ideas in the past of how to address these group searches, and make them significantly faster?
Yeah, we had several discussions around like partitioning data. We never really like did a deep dive and do like material like tests or something, so it could be something we could do here. They were like using Elasticsearch for searches, and I think the global search team is also like involved in that. They want the Elasticsearch to have these like other filters, right? But on our end, it's not like 100% the solution, because I'm not sure if it works for like just listing, right? Listing, give me the first 100 like by created that or something. Would Elasticsearch work for that or something? I haven't really also, so this is also one of the goals, right? Figuring out if this is feasible or not, like maybe spending some time talking with a global search engineer and finding out. So those are some of the things in my mind like that could help, that we could explore.
Yeah, I also like Elasticsearch is not required on self-managed, right? Like not everyone is
Yeah, yeah.
using Elasticsearch on
Yeah,
self-managed.
there are
Guys,
those kinds of like constraints already, but I think product also said before like it could be like an acceptable thing where it's on GitLab.com to help these large instances, but not on self-managed. But then, of course, it makes the code more complex, supporting two code paths, and we also have to make sure it helps with everything, right? Like the counts in the sidebar. These are use the same base SQL query, and if Elasticsearch only helps on a subset of them, then it doesn't really solve the whole problem, right? So it might be better to go some other direction or something. But yeah.
Yeah, cool. Maybe we should add an engineer from the global search to those discussions as well. I know just the person. Cool. On the knowledge side, as I kind of mentioned, the biggest problem for us is those high-level group searches, especially if you add this like if you try to present something not super trivial, but which has a lot of issues, like when label isn't equal to something, then it just times out very often. And we also need to, like, currently we're using the old issues API, and it would be nice to migrate to the new work items, so everything the other two groups are adding was available in GLQL as well. So the next topic is just to synchronize on the kind of commitments and how much time and effort we are willing to spend on this. Nicholas, you have a first item again on the product planning side.
It's a bit of a chicken egg problem. So if we want client-side rendering, most of the work is on the front end. And so it allows me on the back end to fully focus on the performance, right? To get to this limit. If we do not get to a limit that's reasonable, most of the work is on the other hand on the back end side. But I think I can, since this is a Q2 tier 2 commitment, I'm definitely able to commit a lot of my time to this, as it's part of the planning views. And I think we wanted to I think everyone just started to discuss a few of the items that they are concerned about. So far, like what I looked into is like the banned users thing that also chatted about with Heinrich once. we always, for every query, we check if no banned user was the author. And if we denormalize this data on the issues table itself, which spares us this separate query that sometimes flips import stress. Heinrich did some work on this, but still sometimes it's not performant. And I know that the create stage did once a merge request where they started to denormalize that, and they could reuse this work for their merge requests table as well. Then there are some N+1s, but I think Eugenia has more investigation there, and the rollup data that Heinrich also started to look into it and created an epic.
Yeah, just to add, like for the rollup one, it was like a known thing where we implemented the rollup stuff in a way that's, of course, not optimal, but it was at par with what we did with Epics. Epics was not cached too, and it was like computed on the fly. But then this is definitely one of those like we should do. You know, we know we did it that way, but that's not like optimal. So yeah.
On my side, I was actually working on a few things in like as part of the milestone work when I can squeeze some performance things. So part of me joining the group was to maybe focus on something that would be more significant and allocate more time to that. So it would be maybe deciding what could help the most and put the time on it. At the moment, I'm working on investigating which widgets could be improved. One of them is participants, and I have some work already that's basically finishing what was started a few years ago. I think Henrik was involved. So I think this would be a nice optimization, but this is mostly for loading a single work item. This is not about listing. Then obviously we have linked items. That's a problematic one, and that's affecting listing. So maybe I could focus on that as a start. And then more generically, we have the child items, but that's mainly affected by the slow widgets as well. So fixing slow widget would help this. So yeah, that's what I've been focusing on.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah,
good.
I also mentioned there that we're also Matt's working on the dashboard list, right, for work items, and there was a discussion around like limiting it to items you participated with on, because it's difficult to query group level items globally, like including public ones. So it could help, but you know, it's not blocking the work because we were, I think Matt mentioned other heuristics, or Nicholas, you mentioned about like maybe checking assigned and authors first or something like that, but it could be used for that type of work.
Yes. In this case, it was particular about like we should not have a query where you can globally on the whole GitLab instance search for all work items that exist, and you could have potentially have access, right? It's an unnecessary query.
Yeah, which is what we currently do with
Yeah.
my work. It's supposed to be my work, but it's actually like a global
Yeah.
thing. If you delete the default filter.
Yeah, it's a global search without the global search team. So on my side, I've been doing some trying to reduce some object allocation. So I'm more focused on memory usage, which doesn't bring too much performance improvement on the time of the queries, but at least is reducing the number of objects loaded, which at the end reduces a little bit depending on how we filter the query. So firstly, we added an option to filter widgets on the back end. Now we have to implement that on the front end. I know that some UIs on the front end doesn't require all the widgets, so this might bring some improvements in there. Also, some updates might might leverage from that. So when we update just one widget, we can filter to just get to the return of that widget, so we don't have to load all the widgets when we are building the response, or at least load them in memory before building the response itself. So yeah, that's done on the back end. We need to implement on the front end. I have a merge request that I start doing with Natalia. Maybe I'll pair with her later on the week to try to implement in more places. Besides that, I'm also trying to reduce the number of redact objects that we can do on a query. So there is just a little condition that was done later in the query. So we were creating one object for each type of a query, and we can actually reduce that by checking if that type requires a redact object before initializing that object. So that also might bring a little bit of an improvement on memory usage at least. I'm finishing that, and so after this later this week, I might start helping with the more database-oriented improvements, which really will bring more time improvement for the response of the API. So that's me.
Quick question: what is the redact object?
It's an object that remove nodes of the query that you don't have access to. So because GraphQL is built on nodes and edges, and each node or edge can have a type, and we have authorization per type. So when we build the query for the GraphQL, maybe some of the nodes might not have, you don't have authorization, so we redact them from the response. But like if that type doesn't have an authorization, we don't have even to create that object to redact the query. So that's where I'm trying to bring a little bit of improvement in there.
Yeah, I think that's the big difference between GraphQL and REST, where in REST we do all of the authorization and whatnot prior to presenting everything. Whereas in GraphQL, we're sometimes doing it at the service level, but also on every presentation level, basically. Every type would run the authorization again on the object instance of that specific type and so on. So I think that does add quite a bit of overhead. At least that's from some of my debugging like resulted as well on the Postgres side. It was milliseconds, but the whole request was taking seconds because it was doing all of these authorizations and then a lot of objects created that needed to be garbage collected and so on.
Yeah, and honestly, I never understood why we do that, because like as you said, we already use this basically the same servers and finders on REST, so we already do authorization in there, but we also do on GraphQL for some reason. So it's not very clear to me if we really need to do on both sides. Maybe we should try to have an effort to move all the authorization to closer to the database and remove from the API level, having just on the entry level to simplify some stuff. But that's another job for later.
Yeah, the GraphQL type authorization is basically due to this graph thing, right? Where a type could be used in multiple places. And so it's like a more defense in depth thing where, if it's an issue, we do read issue for every issue object we serialize, right? Which is kind of a waste, but then it also protects us if you do like a issue relation somewhere in some object, and yeah, so we don't expose them.
Yeah, it's complex. It's a very complex problem. I agree.
Alexander, you did one optimization for nodes, right? Where you on the type can check like if it's coming from somewhere where it's already authorized. Yeah, Eugenia, you're typing this right.
I did add that skip type authorization where if you know that it's already checked in the service layer, you can basically say from here downwards, don't check this permission because we know it's already checked, kind of thing.
Yeah, I didn't test the difference in performance, but this is something we could do. Unfortunately, I was relying on this on the work I'm doing for Project Epics. But if we decide to remove the type authorization, I can just start filtering the epics out some other way, because we need to check that the epics features is available, that the feature flag is available. So I was relying on this second authorization, but if we remove it, I will find another way. If it's an improvement in performance, I think it's an easy fix, something we can try.
Yeah, but also like for lists, type authorizations will also mix up with the pagination, right? Because
Yes.
like if you load something from the service and then you start removing it at the type level, you loaded like 100 items, but now you only show 10 or however many that authorization. So it's kind of like from my perspective, it's always best to move it left or as left as possible, right? And then not do it on the presentation layer. But yeah, I don't know.
Cool. Heinrich, you have a next one on the project management side?
Yeah, it's basically what I said earlier. Like, focus, I think, for project management could be the Postgres side, and there's also tech debt here. Like Alexandra mentioned the namespace ID, project ID thing. I think it's currently the work items finder. I changed it to use namespace ID if you query like group level items. But then if you like switch to project level items, it uses the old query which filters by project ID. And so if we can clean up that tech debt to always use namespace ID for any level query, it eases the performance or the performance optimization. We only need to look at this one type of query, right? Right now, there's so many variants of the query, and so yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that I'll be looking into from down from here on. Like I think Donald asked me to look into group level work items, basically group level issues and so on. So
Yeah.
I'll start working on some of these refactorings and replacing the usages of project from issues.
Do we then also add a query on the namespace type itself? Because I think right now on the front end we query group or project, and then all the work items from that.
I think we already have that, right?
Maybe I didn't find it then.
But even if we don't, if we are on a project level, all we need to do is change a little bit the resolver, I guess, so that if you're passing in the project, you're passing in the project namespace. So
I think
if
we don't have
if
that,
our finders, if our services will be able to work with the namespace, then well, like the GraphQL can be very easily changed, and it can also be very transparent to the front end. They should not even feel it.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I wanted to step point my. Did you have anything on Heinrich's point? Because if not, I'll verbalize
No,
my.
I think that's fine. It's just I just posted the link to the.
Yeah,
we have the detail, but not the listing one. Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of agree. I think the Postgres query is something that'll be the challenging part, because we have a lot of the filtering that needs to happen, and I don't know if Heinrich already looked at or not, add even more challenges to performance.
And I think Alexandra is gone.
Yeah. Yeah, let's maybe move next to the agenda and we come back to this once Alexander is coming. Oh,
Yeah,
back.
am I back? Yeah, I have.
Yes, you are. Partially, though. Okay, I'll quickly verbalize for knowledge, and maybe Alexander will connect. So yeah, on our commitment, currently we're working on a little bit tangentially related stuff for GLQL performance and reliability. It's not directly improving any of the API, but next we'll have more things more related, which is adding filtering for epics, showing epics themselves, so working on the work items transition into the work items API. And then we also have this group search, which we are still very much interested. So I think we'll be happy to contribute there some capacity. Sorry, Alexander, I moved to the next point, but we can come back to
no
your...
worries. I mean, it's pretty much what I wrote there. Like there are two things that we need to, and the Postgres query optimization is basically the most challenging part, I would say, because there are many ways we can filter by, and it'll be a tough one. I think we'll need to the change of the indexes is the simple one that we can get very fast to. But then we'll need to see how can we maybe denormalize some of the data so that when you query from a very high level group, you can optimally know which groups actually contain issues or don't contain issues and stuff like that. So yeah, that'll be one of the, from my perspective, the very challenging parts too. Maybe we can pull in some database experts as well in this that can advise us how can we denormalize this data given the requirements that we have to query from the top down, right? So yeah.
Yeah, also I'd like to add like the Postgres query planner is also like one of the challenging parts, right? Where plans could flip depending on statistics, and like so it's hard to make it like a stable thing. It could time out for certain scenarios, so we need to test it on like different kinds of hierarchies, different kinds of projects or groups with different number of issues, different filtering, there's so many combinations. So
I don't think that this is something product will agree, but rather feel even more against it. But like I was wondering, because querying from the higher level groups is so much less performant because you have to look now in a lot of more nodes, right? The tree expands dramatically from just one node downwards. Is like to reduce some of the filtering or sorting capabilities, right? Because that also influences. But yeah, I don't think that's something product will agree with. It's just maybe that's where we can start so that we can have a decent performance to fetch a list of queries, but then add more onto that, right? So that's just kind of along the lines of what I'm trying to think. If you think that we can give me this list of work items for these labels, and then I can do some filtering on the front end side, right? That kind of feels a bit like you'll load the first list pretty fast for those 5,000 or whatever items, but then on the front end, the filtering will go much smoother than having to do this full querying. But yeah, I can understand as well if that's not what we want. Yeah, that's what I, that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that sounds actually very much related to what Nicholas was discussing yesterday, and like on the roadmap sync, this idea of containers and having sort of a not just global group searches, but some more limited and like I don't know, containers again for work, so you don't have to query so many projects in group.
I like that idea. The problem still, I think, boils down to how do you build those containers, right? Like in order to build those 5,000 items, you still need to filter some way to get those lists of, like once you have them explicitly listed, like you have explicit 5,000 or 10,000 IDs, those can be queried pretty easily and quite fast, I would think. The problem is how do you get into those containers from my perspective, but yeah.
Cool. Yeah, Nicholas, you have next one.
Yeah, so my idea is like that so one problem that we're currently facing, at least with the work item listing query, is that we do not use it anywhere in production yet. So I think we can only rely on manually tracking this. And my idea is like, let's have a baseline that we currently track, and then every week and after every improvement that we look at, like we manually track this again until we have it in production, and then we can track it globally. So we could find a few groups and projects, run the query there. I just tried it today, like with GitLab org. It takes like 6 seconds to query 100 items. So it's a group query, very not performant. On a project, it's a bit better, but still a lot of N+1s. And one of the biggest problems with, I think Heinrich mentioned, is the group query is not performant at all. Like the query alone for getting all the work items on the issues table is like 6 seconds. So that's a lot. And yeah, we can just use this and manually trigger it and check like what's the performance now and how did it improve over the weeks. That's my recommendation. And maybe have a target of like within half a second, we should load 100 items. Ideally, it should be lower, but that's wishful thinking. It's already 10x if you would achieve that.
There's also the filters, right? So there's probably like a sample list of filters. Like,
Good point. Yeah. I think consolidated lists will happen in next milestone, and then we should see production usage as well.
I wonder.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, with this kind of performance, if listing 100 items take you 6 seconds, will the consolidated list happen in the next milestones? Or it will be like we'll try to roll it out and we'll roll back it immediately?
I'm not sure if anyone has it on their radar. I mean, I know I think that's one of the reasons why Casio started the work on the performance, right? But that we want to roll it out next milestone, and that's still such a performance. I think is not like I'm not sure if there's a point where not sure about management if you know that we should not or will not roll this out with the current performance.
So who's working on this consolidated work item list?
From the check.
Jack, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's working on the front end, right?
Some backend. It's mostly front-end work. Yeah, it's just like navigation and front-end work and using a new query. The new query is not performant, so it's going back to us as backend engineers.
Okay. And who is there a single person responsible for it on the backend or not?
I guess it'll be me if I'll be starting on to group level work items. I'll probably have to dive into that anyway. I didn't start that yet, so I'm not exactly sure what needs to be done there, but I think I'll be one going on with that.
Yeah, I've spoken to Donald about this, so it's probably our team that's gonna get this. And like because it, like Alexandra said, it's part of our tier 2 item around the group level work items. And I don't know if Donald has, explicitly allotted the engineer time or whatever, but it's definitely, I think, on our radar.
Okay. Yeah, I like setting this up as one of the goals. So just to make sure I understand it right, Nicholas, when you say 6 seconds for 100 items, this is not including any complex filtering. It's just the
This
base.
is just GitLab org first 100 work items. Yeah.
Okay.
Onto that actually, because it'll be very complicated to make it work for every single type of filtering, I would imagine. I wonder if we can sync up with product and say, oh, these things like filtering by label, assignee, and I don't know, as like the top of the mind, and then maybe we can either let it time out or in some cases not be as performant or maybe even remove it from capabilities, right? But like there must be something that we want to filter by that is very, very up there, right? Like that will not break every single workflow. Maybe it's everything, ideally not, but I don't know. Like that will be not something that will be nice to sync up and say, well, maybe we can remove this capability or this other one. So then we shrink down the amount of work that we need to do in order to get that out and to get it to an okay place, basically.
Just based on experience, though, it's like adding a filter most of the time actually makes it faster, because Postgres in this case like starts with that list of filtered issues by label ID or something, which is a much smaller list versus going through all the issues of this project or group. So in many cases it helps, although sometimes with multiple filters with ORs or whatever, it also slows down. So
that, and also I think you are correct, and I think what adds to the time is a lot of the time is the ordering. Like if you need to then sort also, then it needs to scan everything anyway, because it needs to put it into a specific order, and
yeah.
and only then filter out the items that don't match the filtering. So it makes it so maybe it's not the filtering per se, but maybe less ordering. Yeah, that's something that I can take out and see what we want to maybe remove or consider less options of.
Yeah, actually, this is like we even have a doc page for this. I can link it to it later. Like Adam Heggie wrote this whole like in operator optimization, right, and describes this problem with group level issues, where we do namespace ID in, a list of namespace IDs, or project ID in like a list of project IDs. You can't do the sorting, so the Postgres has to get everything and sort them in memory. And like in operator optimization is a option I considered before, but then it doesn't help for count queries. It complicates the code a lot, and like so we need to find a way to do it without
And it doesn't
that
work
thing.
every time.
Yeah.
I wonder though, for these count queries, can we set up a number beyond which it just doesn't make sense to count? Because like if I say I have 5,000 items plus, do I care that it is 5,900, where it's like I don't know, can we say 5k plus and that's it? Because then all we need to do is say get me first item, offset it by 5,001. If it's more, then we have more. If it's less, then you try and query basically the count total, right? Or whatever number. Like the lower, obviously, the better, but I don't know. Just wondering if that's. I think we had this discussion some time ago, but then again, like maybe we can lower it down, and then maybe we can have some sort of a sync way to increment it to say instead of 5,000, it's say 10,000 plus, and so on and so forth, rather than exact counts.
I saw that was muted before. I would definitely do this. We did this with CI job. We do this with CI jobs a lot, where we just show 1,000 plus pipelines, especially on the instance level where it's not feasible to count them at all. So yeah, 1,000,
Yeah.
5,000, 10,000 makes sense not to enumerate every single issue in the database.
Yeah, especially that we don't have numbered pagination these days. Is like it's kind of make it a bit easier because you don't need to know how many pages you have and so on. So it like you don't have this mismatch in conception where you show 10 pages, but you actually have like only 1,000 items or something like that. I don't know.
We use something like that for the sidebar, where if it's more than 1,000, we start rounding it, and also we cache it. But this is not used for the tabs. So when you go to the tabs, open, close, those are using filters, and the service, the count service that does the caching and the rounding it, that doesn't work when it's not called when we have filters. So those tabs, if you go now to GitLab org to epics, you see the exact number in each tab, and it's immense. So
I think we removed this in a new design, if I'm
yes,
correct.
I think the design is 2 tabs, but I don't remember what they.
I mean, it's an epic. I think it's the epic and the issue tab, the work items.
But there's no
but
more counts.
there's no more counts anymore. It's just like the filter with state is open as the default tab. Like it's a default filter, and then you do no longer see the other counts for all enclosed.
Yeah, but there's still one count, right? And this is also for the saved views for the future. There's no more tabs, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I'm thinking like maybe more globally, right? Like, because even if you have, for instance, 100 child items, do you really care that it's 100 or it's 59 or it's 60? Like, can you say, or like more than 100, you say 100 plus and that's it. I don't have to pull a count for everything. Because if we trickle it down to the work item hierarchy now, you can have the same problem. Like one Epic can have, I think, 5,000 direct children, and then those can have up to 5,000 sub children, and so on. So in theory, that can grow pretty large as well. And doing a count like that is also like expensive. So like, I wonder if that should be or can be some kind of a more holistic approach all over plan, at least, if not all over GitLab, where we'll have some count limits, and if it's over that, we just don't display that number anymore. We don't care to run the query to count things.
We actually have that like concern or like a concern or module or something for our API, limited counts thing. So in our REST APIs, we have this like X total pages header or something, and we already have code in place where if the count, so it's a limited count, it's a count query with a limit 10,000 or something, and if it goes over that limit, then we don't return that header. So we have like previous work that does this kind of thing.
Cool.
Yeah, we only have like 5 minutes left, so I want to have a kind of good action items list for the next one. And it sounds like there are a lot of different problems all over the place. So maybe what we should do now is just focus on establishing the baseline for this week, and queries that we really want to optimize. What is the current performance where we want to get? I like the suggestion from Nicholas for the work items stuff. What other queries do you think, like if every one of you can name just one thing, one query, what would it be at this point?
Can we be specific about the Nicholas's one? Is that related to group and project level work items? Just bare that bare query?
Yeah, the point number 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, it would be these two queries I mentioned. The initial queries for project and group level on GitLab org and GitLab. In addition, I would like to track it as a signed in and as a signed out, like as an anonymous user, because there are differences in performance. Something we need to consider. Because the group level always times out right now if you're not signed in or don't have a membership with GitLab org.
Yeah, I was about to say that the difference between having a membership and not having a membership and not being signed in, it's very different. It's 3 very different scenarios. I would focus on that as well.
Cool. But this is a work items query. Do we want to focus also on the current issues API at all?
They use the same underlying thing, so it should be pretty like reusable or whatever the fix would be. Like, they use the same finder, so it's the same query, and yeah.
Unless there's a problem with the authorizations on GraphQL.
Do we have to focus on the issues listing page at the group level, given that we want to work towards the unified page? I mean, if we get it to work for all work items, we should not have to move back to the issues at the group level. And if we don't make it worse for the issues group level as it is already, we are not breaking anything. So I don't know if we need to split our capacity to that, but maybe there is something I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. From my perspective, I would focus more on work items and stuff than legacy issues or whatever.
Okay. Does this like currently we have these queries for just top 100 work items on the work items API. We have filtering, which we need to ask for kind of either get it from product or maybe look into the logs to see what's the most frequently used stuff. Do we want to focus on anything else at this moment, or these two queries will help with everything else kind of by default because we optimize the finders and database, etc.?
For me,
That and
the widgets focus on a couple of slow widgets because they're definitely loaded by the list, even if when there's no filters. So I would say linked items maybe is the first one I would like to tackle. Participants and rollups, I don't think they will affect listing. I don't think that we use it there. We use it for hierarchy. So rollups is a nice to have, but maybe not the first. The first I think would be linked items, and then participants.
Cool. Anything else?
yeah, I was thinking in general, what Casio was looking like. Is there anything to be extra to be gained on the GraphQL side, right? Is there anything that we can, especially when we talk about lists, there is probably something that we can improve in terms of permissions and so on and so forth. Like maybe, I don't know, I will just say it, but like read issue, do we need to do read issue on every item, or can we move it to the namespace level itself, right? Maybe not. There is some confidential issues and so on, so those will need to be checked separately probably. But if we check if the user has confidential issues reading at the namespace level, then maybe we don't have to do that check on every single work item. So like try and sift through the permissions that we are already checking. Maybe there is some optimizations on that in terms of lists and not checking on every item.
Cool. Okay. Can we then just split this work and go into the work? Like I'll create a thread on the work items working group issue and just set a baseline. So Nicholas, you can collect those two queries performance you listed above. I question, can you also take as an action item talking to product about the filters and what is the most important?
For Alexandro, you mean, or for me?
Anyway, I meant you, but
Okay, then
maybe
I will
Alexandra
take it.
can.
Yeah.
Cool.
Although
And
it's
then
also kind of dependent on our research on what, product can't make a decision unless we also tell them like which filters make the query slower or, or not, right? So it's hard to get a decision there without more data.
How many options do we currently have though at the group level? Updated by and created. And then there is title. I mean, can we remove sorting by title, for instance? Like, is it really
I
sorting by
think
title?
every sorting that we will ask for will be a fight to remove.
Yeah, but like currently at the group level, as far as is it on Epics as well? Like is it sorting by, like, I think sorting by title can maybe moved into front end once we get there. Like you can then reorder them to whatever lists. But I don't know. I'm just like,
I'm not sure if we should approach this from perspective like, can we remove this? That as like any filter, any sorting, as Nicholas said, it will be a fight to kind of remove it from the product. But what we can do is ask what is the most important and focus on optimizing those parts. So kind of include it in this baseline that we're measuring. So yeah, at least things that are more important are performing well enough. And then we can go back to the discussion of removal.
I don't think we have any way to know that from our logs, right? I don't think there is an easy way to know
We have
like
right
queries
in
and
the API you see in which how these issues right now get ordered by. And if you can provide them with like, okay, 90% of the issues are ordered by created at, well, that's all optimization.
It's also tricky because we do the store in the DB your last filter. So even without the param, it uses your last sort. So, but I think optimizing created at is like the #1 priority right now because even just that, the default sort is already slow. So, and maybe the fix for that would fix others or something, right? So we don't even need to think about that.
Yeah, in my opinion, the action item is not check with product, but get the metrics. And because product will ask us like what are the metrics, and we will, instead of asking data analytics, we will just get it ourselves.
Yeah, great. And then Eugenia, for you to also, can you establish the baseline for the widgets that you were talking about?
Should we measure it with the 100 items query, like Nicholas used, something like that?
I mean, you were talking about these couple widgets that you want to optimize. Just get the queries.
Just a single one.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Just yeah, like I don't know. Go if it's used. As I understand, it's already used in the product, right? So we can just go to Kibana or maybe even dashboards and see how it's doing. Or maybe not if it's just one field in the query, but I'll leave it up to you how exactly it's best to measure this. And then, Alexandru, can you take on this, or maybe Casio, the permissions check on the GraphQL site versus finders?
Yeah, I was going to focus on the queries. Well, try and understand the queries as well, since I'm going to work on the group level work items. But yeah, I can also take the GraphQL or Casio can take like whatever. I don't mind either way.
Yeah, I was planning to do the check on the difference between the logged in and not logged in and membership and not membership, which will be intersective with this work. So maybe I'll do a check focus on that part, and Alexander can do a more broad check, and we can sync.
Okay,
one
I'll
thing
take the permissions. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I was actually planning to do was to map out what our Finder does. So I've worked a lot on it, and like I think I can present it in a way. I'm still struggling. I'm still trying to think how, but like a flowchart thing, or like how the Finder decides what to do or what it does, like filter by groups with permission first or something. And then once we get that document or chart, maybe it's easier to discuss which parts we could, optimize, take out, or just.
All right. Yeah, that sounds also like an awesome idea. So for the next time, we can establish in the baseline, and Heinrich starts to look into the Finder. Everybody else also, like, not just establishing the baseline, but if you can look into what's the biggest optimization there can be, it will be nice. My
Lisa,
last
do you have anything that you're interested in?
Sorry, did you address me?
Yeah, if you have anything that you're interested in working as part of this.
Yeah, so far, if like I understood everything correctly, subgroups is something that is relevant for GLQL, like fetching issues, merge requests from nested groups might be a big performance bottleneck. So I just wonder, and I understood that there is quite some intersection from what you're going to do for work items. So I wonder if there's some actionable for our team in terms of GLQL and work items subgrouping. Small first thing to do to start investigating that.
I don't have an opinion. Maybe since Nicholas is working on kind of the most generic scene right now, like Nicholas, feel free to ask Alyssa for help, include her and those things. Yeah.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Yeah. That might be a good idea. It also give me some overview and maybe it'll give me some ideas how this can be implemented for our use cases.
Perfect. My final question is: weekly cadence works for everyone? So next week, same time.
Yeah, let's do weekly, and then we can reconsider if we need more time.
Cool. All right. Thank you all for your time. I think it was a really good discussion. Hope we can actually improve stuff. And yeah, I'll capture the outcomes and to-dos on the issue. Ping you all. Yeah. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.